Hello everyone, Omores here. I guess you already know, especially if you have been here before, that Windows 3.1 can run on modern hardware, but it gets even better. There is a brand new driver in town that lets Windows 3.1 run on actual modern GPUs in Full HD with 60 million colors, which isn't exactly something brand new to Windows 3.1. But back in the day, due to hardware limitations, you basically had to choose between higher resolutions with fewer colors or lower resolutions with more colors. But now with this new modern generic SVGA driver for Windows 3.1, we can forget about those limitations. Unlike traditional SVGA drivers, which are tied to specific hardware, this one uses something called VBE or VESA BIOS Extensions. Basically, it's a standardized way to access high resolutions and color depths through the GPU's BIOS, as long as VBE support is available. And here is the best part, almost every modern GPU is VBE compliant, and since Windows XP advanced VBE support has been built right into the standard Windows display driver, so our desktop will look decent before we get to install the actual display driver. Now, if our GPU is running exclusively in UEFI mode, VB won't be available, but in that scenario we wouldn't even be able to install Windows 3.1 on actual hardware anyway. And speaking of installations, here is how we get this driver up and running. First, we head over the PluMGMK GitHub page. Yes, that's the same guy who released the AACI fix, the fix that allows Windows 3.1 to run in enhanced mode on modern motherboards with SATA drives. If you missed that video, pause this right now and go check it out. Trust me, it's a must-watch. Now back to our video driver. We need to download the files from the release page. Only two files are absolutely necessary: VBESVGA DRV and VDD VBE 386. Once we have these, the next step is to edit the system.ini file. This is where we make the necessary modifications so that Windows loads these files instead of the standard VGA driver or whatever other driver is currently installed. The changes are pretty straightforward. In the boot section, we specify the VBESVGA DRV file, and in the 386 ENH section, we add the VDD VBE 386 file. After that, we'll need to create a new VBESVGA section to configure the resolution, bit depth, and other stuff. And of course, let's make sure that the driver files are copied in Windows/System folder. I'm sure that the official release will handle this automatically with a standard OEM setup INF file. But until then, let's check out how this driver works with an AMD RX 480 GPU running in 65K colors. It looks fantastic if you ask me. I've never experienced Windows 3.1 with so much going on the screen at once. Anyway, this driver, I'm using the 0.3 pre-release, isn't perfect, and some of its quirks can be a little confusing, sometimes even amusing. For example, something as simple as solitaire, just one run on this setup, yet a complex game like SimCity 2000 not only works flawlessly but looks absolutely stunning in Full HD. Just take a look.
Helicopter 1 reporting heavy traffic.
Another demanding game that works is Doom for Windows. Now this is a 32-bit Windows game that runs through Win32s and WinG. Think of WinG as an early version of DirectX. This is essentially the graphics backbone of Windows 3.1. And when it comes to Doom, the goal of WinG was to bring DOS-level performance to Windows. It's just fascinating how developers worked around the constraints of early Windows systems to deliver a better gaming experience. Alright, As you can see, having so many pixels on the screen isn't something Windows 3.1 software can't handle. In fact, most software actually benefits from the improved screen real estate. Just take a look at how good Microsoft Studio looks in Full HD, or Microsoft Word, which looks so clean and usable even by today's standards. Now let's talk about browsing the web. Opera 362, the last browser ever released for Windows 3.1, also holds up nicely on a high-res display. By the way, getting online with Windows 3.1 is way easier than you think. And here is how I did it. I used a common Realtek 8139 Ethernet card, which has drivers for Windows 3.1. Next, I installed the TCP/IP protocol, of course, and that's it. This is the whole process of getting online. Now, when it comes to browsing the web, is it practical? Well, not really, but is it fun to try? Absolutely. And honestly, the fact that there are only a handful of websites that actually work with Windows 3.1 just adds to the charm. It's like stepping into a time machine and experience the internet the way it was back in the mid 90s. Now back to our driver. I have to mention that this is not just a patch of an existing driver, but it's a rewrite based on the existing source code. Back in the days of 16-bit Windows, video drivers had to implement low-level graphics routines like drawing boxes directly on the hardware. But despite this complexity, I think it's already a solid driver, though it's still a work in progress. Aside from various screen drawing glitches, which I'm sure will be fixed by the official release, there is not much we can complain, except maybe video playback. Some videos do play, but there is this standard called DCI, or Display Control Interface, which needs support not only from the compatible software like video players, but also at the video driver level. Certain players, like a single media player, rely on DCI to work properly, and this is what we get on the screen using the test file. On the other hand, Apple's QuickTime player takes a different approach, and video playback works just fine on .mov files.
Plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device. And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build, whoa. Moving right along.
That must be why we're not shipping Windows 98 yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, and now let's take a quick tour using the Matrox G450, a card that hit the market in late 2000 and officially has zero support for Windows 3.1. But here's the thing, people started wondering, could the Windows 3.1 drivers made for the G400, the previous model, work on the G450? After all, these two cards are sharing the same chip. Well, there were some attempts, and the answer was rather no. But that didn't stop me from running my own tests. And guess what? It actually works at 24-bit color depth. At lower bit depths, the screen gets garbled, which seems more like a refresh rate issue. I don't know, but honestly, I'm perfectly fine running it at the maximum bit depth is what I would have done it anyway. By the way, the installation looks so crisp because I initialized the card with the VBESVGA driver by setting the resolution to 1280 by 1024. And now, as you would expect, the driver identifies the G450 as a G400. Fine by me. Now let's see what kind of experience we get with this more or less official driver. First off, there are no screen glitches. That's a plus. But as I mentioned earlier, the VBE SVGA driver is still in development, so there is room for improvement. The big difference? Well, with this driver, all types of video playback are now working. Now let's be real, watching videos isn't exactly a top priority in Windows 3.1. Anyway, Microsoft Encarta is a regular part of my setup, but with the VBESVGA driver, it doesn't render properly, not just the videos, but the entire interface. However, with the Matrox driver, everything works flawlessly. So for me, getting Encarta to work smoothly is definitely a big plus.
I'm going to try to get on the battle bolt now.
We had a good aliveness test.
Oh, great. All right. Outstanding. It's hard for me because the operator stretched out. Okay. How about a little bit of support? Like 6 inches. Back and give you a port.
Now, when it comes to gaming, though the G450 doesn't seem to perform any faster, plus the lack of 256 color support does impact the performance in SimCity 2000. The good news, the frame rate is about the same when running Doom for Windows. Now, in the end, let's talk briefly about hardware compatibility. Since this is a pre-release driver, that's not a huge concern just yet. The oldest card I tested was this Matrox G450, and it works perfectly fine. However, it didn't work with an NVIDIA 7900GS from 2006 or an ATI Radeon X950 GT released 1 year later. On the other hand, it did work with a ATI Radeon R7 250 and even a slightly newer RX 480, which was the main card used in this video. So, if you want to relive Windows 3.1's glory days in HD, links to the driver and GitHub are below. Go grab it. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next video.